السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, this is our the second part to the Islam and Atheism series, and we're going to be discussing the proofs of God, and a lot of it will be speaking about the how you should approach it, both on a textual sense and the scientific sense. And with us, alhamdulillah, we have Dr. Adrien. He received his PhD in biophysics from the US, and he's currently a lecturer in physical chemistry here at the University of Sheffield. He's published a book called Islam, Scientifically Religious, Using Science to Rationalize Faith. Dr. Adrien is a convert to Islam, how was it, 20 plus years ago? About 20 years ago. And many of us have seen Dr. Adrien at the Muslim Welfare House, regularly praying there, and he's quite an active participant there. And alhamdulillah, we've also had the pleasure to host his wife here at the university. We'll start off with a recitation of the Quran, as always, the best way to start, by our brother Mika.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين ومن آياته منامكم بالليل والنهار وابتغاؤكم من فضله إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يسمعون ومن آياته يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينزل من السماء ماء فيحيي به الأرض بعد موتها إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون ومن آياته أن تقوم السماء والأرض بأمره ثم إذا دعاكم دعوة من الأرض إذا أنتم تخرجون وله من في السماوات والأرض كل له قانتون. And the translation: So exalted is Allah when you reach the evening and when you reach the morning, and to Him is due all praise throughout the heavens and the earth, and exalted is He at night and when you are at noon. He brings the living out of the dead and brings the dead out of the living, and brings to life the earth after its lifelessness, and thus you will be brought out. And of His signs is that He created you from dust, then suddenly you are human beings dispersing throughout the earth. And of His signs is that He created for you from yourselves mates that you may find tranquility in them, and He placed between you affection and mercy. Indeed, in that are signs for people who give thought. And of His signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your languages and your colors. Indeed, in that are signs for those of knowledge. And of His signs is your sleep by night and day, and your seeking of His bounty. Indeed, in that are signs for people who listen. And of His signs is that He shows you the lightning causing fear and aspiration, and He sends down rain from the sky by which He brings to life the earth after its lifelessness. Indeed, in that are signs for people who use reason. And of his signs is that the heaven and the earth stand by his command. Then when he calls you with a single call from the earth, immediately you will come forth. And to him belongs whoever is in the heavens and the earth. All are to him devoutly obedient.
Barakallahu feekum, dear President. And inshallah, without further delay, we'll hand it to Dr. Adrien. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you for organizing it. Thank you for inviting me. I hope I'm up to the. I can use this. Again, thank you again for organizing this event. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope I'll be up to the level. I hope I won't disappoint you. It will be a bit different, you'll see. So the topic, maybe first off, I'm a scientist. I've studied physics, biophysics. Then I did, so my PhD was in biophysics. Then I did postdocs in chemistry and in physical chemistry. And now I'm a chemical chemical physician. So I basically juggle between chemistry, physics, and biology. That's what I've been formatted with. That's how I've been brainwashed with sciences. So that's how I turn to the religion also. I have this physical mindset. And my goal was trying to make sense of religion with that mindset. Like I've been affected by science. I've been, dealing with it for years. More than 20 years, more than what I have been Muslim with. And I'm trying to make sense of religion. So the topic today will be looking for the proofs of God. And I first want to introduce the topic, because to talk about proofs to a Muslim audience is like, do you have doubts? What's happening? Why are you attending that? You shouldn't be here. You should be in the Muslim welfare house preparing Ramadan. No, but you came here. So I want to talk about proofs. And the first question I would like to ask you is, what proof are you looking for exactly? Like maybe you don't have doubts, but maybe you would like to be reassured. How can you be reassured using science? Maybe that's the question. And so whether it's a proof or whether it's a reassurance, I would like to ask you what you're looking for exactly. Maybe not exactly, but what are you thinking of? I need some answers, which is why I brought the books. I need to bribe you to answer me. So anyway, I wrote the book. The book will be about the presentation, or vice versa. The presentation will be about the book. If you answer, I'll give it to you for free. So tell me, what are you looking for?
Just by looking, you don't, Allah hasn't manifested himself in a physical sense. And so we don't get to see Allah as he is in that sense. So some people will start to put that as the main argument. You can't see him, you can't feel him, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
what are the different ways, not only for personal sense, but also to others, to explain why God exists?
Okay, yep. It's like, why should you believe in something you cannot touch, feel, see, or, yep. Go ahead. I'm looking for a pen.
You can't see the cause, you can see the effect. So you can kind of take back everything to like its origin. Think of something that you see, you can observe in the universe, and then think about where it originated from, and then kind of like weigh out the probability of each option.
Okay.
And then I think that could take you, if with the right parameters, to take it to like a logical conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I agree. That would be the march I take here. What else? What else are you looking for? Like, why did you come here? Why did you come here? Yes.
I feel everyone wants to seek reassurance for not just religion, but many things within their lives. And
Aha, even science then. Yep, that makes sense. Women, I haven't heard. No. Later, maybe. So yes. So maybe you cannot see it directly. Maybe you can see the effect. True. So maybe to answer the question, to help answering the question, you can go back to the Quran and see how did people mention the Quran responded to the call to believe. And you have different ways how to invite people. For example, we have Musa alayhi salam. In his time, magic was prevalent, and he came with a better magic, like the staff turning into snake and the snake eating the other snakes or the other staffs. Then you have Isa alayhi salam. In his time, medicine was quite prevalent, and he came with a better medicine, like he could bring people back from dead people back to life. He could cure people. He could cure leprosy and other diseases. Then we have our Prophet, Muhammad alayhi salam. In his time, poetry was prevalent, and he came with a better poetry, with a better, I wouldn't call it poetry, with a better text, with the Quran. So just looking at the different levels of magic, different levels of medicine, different levels of poetry, that's how the prophets in their own time convinced, or this is one way how the prophet convinced their own people. So we can think that in our time, what are we good at? We are good at science, we're good at technology. So intuitively, you can look for a scientific proof or technological proof, or maybe something that defies science or technology to prove religion. So intuitively, that's the mindset we can have. Then when I'm looking for proofs or reassurance, I'm looking for proof for not any God, for the God we have in Islam. And that God is all-powerful. Allah is all-powerful. And I'm a servant of God. And so as a servant, what can I ask? What proofs do I deserve? That's the second question. First, what type of proof I'm looking for, and then what do I deserve as a servant of Allah? And here you can again go back to the Quran and see how different people, what they asked and how God responded to their requests. And we have the example of Bani Israel when they asked to see Allah directly. And what happened? Yes, they were stricken. And also even Musa alayhi salam asked to see God. And what happened with him? Yes, God refused to show himself to him. And then he showed himself to the mountain collapsed and he fainted. And then he brought him back to awakeness. Or you can also have the example of the apostles. By the way, when Musa alayhi salam wakes up after fainting, he repents. The next verse is that he repents to Allah. He makes tawbah, which means that his request was inappropriate. So for him to ask to see God was already inappropriate. It was inappropriate for Bani Israel. It was inappropriate even for the Prophet. Then as just like a normal human being, I don't deserve to see God directly. So then this brings me to your point. Then I have to go indirectly. Then the last example are the apostles. They asked for a table, and what happened with them? Do you know tell me. Yeah, on which conditions? He gave them the table, he gave it, but on what condition?
If they disbelieve after that, they're going to be given a punishment that no one has ever been given.
Yeah, they will have the worst punishment if they dare disbelieve after that miracle. So which is pretty strong. It's like, you can imagine it's even worse than what Pharaoh will get. So anyway, so as a believer in Allah, I need some evidence to believe in it, but I have to adjust what I ask for. I cannot ask to see Him directly. So the goal is to see Him then indirectly, to see what I deserve, to ask exactly what do I deserve. So I won't deserve a splitting of the moon. I don't think so. And I hope I don't need it. But again, in a scientific or in technological society, maybe you could ask something that has some scientific significance. And we had some people coming up, start talking about how you could relate science in the Quran and using these relation as a proof of God. And I don't know if you've seen the three, here they are, the three men. Do you know them? Yes.
Was the first one, did he do the autopsy on Fir'aun's body?
Yeah, he was an Egyptologue.
Yeah, was he the Frenchman?
Yes, yes. What's his name? Do you know him? What is it? He wrote a book, one of maybe the most famous book on science and on Islam and religion. And sorry, yeah, Islam and science. The book was called what? Islam, science. No, Islam, the Bible, and Islam, the Bible, and science. Something like this. What's his name? Maurice Bucaille, Professor Bucaille. All right, he died. What's the middle one? Who's the middle one? Yes. Now he's in jail. It's all right. Well, he did other things. But he was quite prominent in pushing for the miracles, scientific miracles of the Quran. Who's the last one? The third one? American professor. You can still see some of his work on Quran. When you buy a copy of the Quran, you can see his work on the annex, and the appendix. His name is Kate Moore. He was an embryologist. So whenever you read something about embryology in the Quran, it's him. He died maybe 2-3 years ago, before COVID. So anyway, so these three people, their main argument was to say, look, modern science is X, but the Quran said X long time ago. And it's impossible for the Prophet ﷺ to know about X. So so Islam is true and God exists. That's the basic argument. So they are still looking for proofs. They are still looking for miracles. And again, as a normal human being, believing in Allah, like the apostles, or maybe taking the apostles as a counter-example, I prefer to not ask for miracles, but I prefer to go indirectly. So instead of looking for proofs, maybe I have to rephrase the question. Not which proof are you looking for, but maybe how can is it still justified to believe in God? And because we're in a scientific world, is it still scientifically justified to believe in God? Or maybe another way how to rephrase it is, why shall we remain religious in a scientific or technological world? If that makes sense. So these are the answers I will try to answer. Sorry, these are the questions I'll try to answer. That makes sense. All right. And so again, I won't necessarily look for miracles, but I will be looking more at methodologies and processes. How do you establish faith, and how do you establish a scientific theory? And my goal is to analyze both and to see how they are related. And it turns out, at least for me, they're quite similar. The processes are similar. So again, the steps you take and the conditions you put to believe in a scientific theory are quite similar to the one you use and you need to establish faith. So that's how I will try to justify faith in Islam itself. Does that make sense? All right. So I'll go into 3 steps, 3 chapters if you want. 1, I need to demystify science. I have to explain what it is. I will try to explain what it is and how it is practiced. Then the second is to establish, how to establish and practice new theories. And then the third one, so first in that second chapter, you can see, yes, in that second part, establishing and practicing new theories, I will go into the criteria you need in order to practice and to accept them. Then I will use the same criteria and ask if faith or Islam answers this criteria and see if they're the same, and hopefully they do. So first I'll go through demystifying science. So the first step in here is to disrupt this notion that science and religion are in opposition. I don't know, maybe not for you, but for me at least, when I grew up in France, in school, indirectly they ask you to either do science or to be religious, and you have to choose. After a while, you have to choose. And my choice was done quickly, and I became a scientist. I mean, the science or religion has no place in school, at least not in France. France is quite anti-religious as a society. The UK is a bit better, though. So anyway, what are the main critics against religion? Go ahead. I have to write them down.
What's the name of the Rich Dawkins?
Yes.
Hitchens, Harris. But basically, what they call them, like four horsemen of new atheism.
Okay.
So Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens. Who's the last one?
He's just got a beard.
So what's the argument?
Their argument is that science, or Dawkins, he says that evolution kind of explains, like we don't, like it like disproves God, essentially. Like they kind of say that science, because science is a way to understand the world, we don't need God basically for that purpose. Well, some people make that argument. I don't know if all of them make that argument.
So maybe to rephrase it, I remember Dawkins saying science works.
Yeah.
He's quite famous for that quote. So let me just write it down. Science works. So that's for science. I'm looking for the argument against religion. What religion is labeled with? Yes.
So you ask any atheist, he would say religion is faith, science is fact.
Okay, all right. So what do you mean by science is religion is faith?
Blind faith, more specifically.
Sorry?
Blind faith, more specifically.
Blind. Okay, go ahead.
Religion turns people into terrorists.
Ah. Yes, what else?
Science is based on fact.
Yep, I go on the other side. Facts. Yes?
Religious people currently tend to be like economically backwards, intellectually backwards.
Ah, backwards. Yep. Okay, what else? Yep.
People say religion is a tool that's used for controlling people.
Ah, yep, the tool. To manipulate. Yep, sorry. Yes. Yep. Good, evil. So how to answer the good, evil answer?
That's our next.
Okay, good. That's nice. What else? What else against religion? There's more. So it is what? Prone to violence, backward, manipulative. Go ahead. Yep, in black.
I think it's generally believed that scientific theories are like fact because they're falsifiable, so you can test whether they're true or false.
Testable then. Yep, you can test them. Falsifiable. That's the. Yes. Yep. What else? So okay, for science, pro-science, what science is praised with? Rational. Yep.
Basically, science, mathematics is everywhere. It kind of adds up like the rational. It's like natural, like it's what nature is. everything to be explained by these natural laws.
Encompassing? Yeah.
Encompassing, yeah. All these laws encompass everything.
Yep. Okay. So here you can already say usually if one is rational, the other one is irrational. If one is backward, then the other one is modern. And so you can see a clear opposite. And the goal, it's nice to keep these in mind, because the goal through the talk will try to demystify science and to show how religion is not so much this, but it's quite similar to what we glorify science with. Like we can see still logic in religion. We can see some rationality. Even though science or religion is said that it's backward, then in opposition, science is modern. Maybe modern does not always equate with good either. Like all what is modern is not the best either. So we'll go through, going through the talk, we'll try to see these. So here's what I have. And I mean, you've said most of it. You said all of it. And I have also, manipulative, violent, in comparison to a science that is apparently neutral. So anyway, we'll try to break down these different attributes. So that's the first perception. It's nice to be aware of it. Then when you do science, when you start doing science, you realize, maybe first, how do you do science? Let me start with this question. What is science for you? How do you do science? Yes.
Trying your best to understand how something works. So it's based on theory, trying to test it as best as possible, and whichever theory is the closest, or whichever theory makes the most sense is what you go with. It's the adopted.
Yes. So you see something and you're trying to make sense of it. Yes. So first you have to experience the world. You have to perceive the world. And I titled that second point as a limited perception. So obviously, as a human, we perceive the world through our 5 senses: the taste, the ear, you can see, you can feel. But these senses are limited. I don't see what's happening behind the wall. I cannot hear what's happening in the other room. But we can develop tools to push this limit a bit further. So you can still develop tools, like here I put 2 examples, a magnifying glass to see better, but you can develop them even further and develop a telescope and you can see even further in space. So you can push these limits a bit further, but you're just pushing the limit. The limit still exists. I won't go into scientific details. Anyway, the telescope cannot see everything. You still have a limit to the telescope. I don't know what the limit is. It's few. I don't know how many, like millions of light years, but you still have a limit. And maybe the best way to... So these are tools. But at the end, the one who makes sense of the data is still a human being. So you can still, like the tool may be objective. It's just an object. It do what it's made to do. Like a phone helps you to call someone. But the one who calls, the one who uses it is a human being, and you're subjective. So the interpretation of the data is still subjective because it's done by you. So science is a subjective endeavor by nature because you're doing it. You as a human being are doing it, even though the tool is objective. That makes sense. Objective meaning the tool cannot decide whether it wants to do the experiment or not. It does it. You press on the button, it does whatever it has to do. But then the one who makes sense of the data, the ones who interpret the data, it's you. You expect to see something through the experiment. Your expectation will shape how you understand the data. So subjectivity is an integral part of science. And maybe one of the best example to show that subjectivity or to show that limitation is when you look at space. And I don't know if you heard about dark matter or dark energy. What is it, if you heard about it? Tell me. Yes, go ahead.
assuming you have normal matter, then you have and I mean dark matter hasn't been proven. It's just a theory that assuming that there is normal matter and then there's another bit of the universe that we don't know is made up of this this dark matter. So that's a good theory that's been put forward to basically fill this gap.
Yep.
This gap that we don't know.
Yep. It is to fill a gap. So the dark matter is to explain something that should be here, but we don't know what it is. Go ahead.
Is it to do with the fact that there's gravitational waves that shouldn't really be there, so dark matter is a stopgap whilst people figure out what's causing it?
I'm not sure how it's related to gravitational waves, but it has to do with gravity initially. It comes out from assessing what should be the mass of the universe. So if you want to assess the universe and say, okay, what's out there? And you can take a telescope and look at the stars, count the stars, estimate how heavy they are, and you can estimate what's the mass of the universe. That's one way how to do it. You just count stars. Another way is to look at how these stars, how this galaxy moves in respect to one another, just looking at trajectories. Because they are subjected to gravity, so they should attract each other, so they're revolving around each other, and based on that trajectory, you can again estimate the mass. So you have two ways how to estimate the mass. And these two numbers are off by about 2 orders of magnitude. So then you have to ask a question. Either our theory are totally wrong, we messed up, it's not only gravity, maybe something else, or there's the mass, but the mass, we don't see it. Maybe looking at the telescope is not enough. Maybe there should be something that exists. We just don't see it, but it should be here and heavy. It should be actually comprise 95% of the universe. And that's what the community tends toward, that something exists, we just don't know what it is. So we have a gap, we try to fill in it up with what? We call it dark matter or dark energy, something that we don't know. It's dark because we don't see it. And that comprises about 95% of the universe, which means we don't know about 95% of the universe, at least. That's our current scientific understanding.
Is the 5% normal matter from the observable universe?
Yeah. So these are all the stars, the galaxy, the gas, cloud, and other. So that shows the limitation. As a scientist, we know we're limited, and we just have to deal with it. So then that limitation brings another question. So we agree as a scientist we don't have access to truth. We don't know the whole reality. But you still have to do science. We still would like to push towards it. So how do you do it? If you don't have access to the data, but you want to get close to it, one way how to approach it is through approximations or probabilities. Does that make sense? So one way to access or to approach an inaccessible truth is to go through either approximation, averages, trend, models, theories. That's what it's used for. Here I just show an example of, that's the stock market. The stock market, the goal of in the stock market, the goal is to predict what will happen, the price in the future. But there's so much data, you cannot take into account all the data and all what's happening in the world, all the commercial trades, to predict it. There's just too many. The data exist, but it's just too many. You cannot take everything into account. So you have to go through averages, through approximations, and that's how you predict the market, and that's how they make their money. Right. And maybe another example, in quantum mechanics, that might be an easier example. I don't know. Why are you smiling at quantum mechanics? I like quantum mechanics.
Is that the wave function?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep. This one is the wave function. Sorry. In quantum mechanics, the basic principle in quantum mechanics is everything is probabilistic. You can imagine you're made out of molecules. The molecules are made out of atoms. The atom is made out of nuclei and electrons. But we don't really know where these electrons are. So we just approximate them. I said maybe they're here, but most probably they're in this region. Go ahead.
So is it rather than considering
Not even the bulk, even for individual particles. Go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't there like a theory as well that they act differently when you're observing them to when you're not observing them as well?
Yes, you interrogating the molecule will affect the molecule. Like you can have, when you deal with entangled particles, let's say you have a particle that's split into two. They can be either blue or red. They can only be either blue or red. If one is blue, the other one is red. So initially they split, you don't know what it is, and you observe one, and you see, oh, it's red. The other one has to be blue. You observing one affect the other. You observe one, and then you force the other to be in a certain state. So that exists, yeah. But initially, as long as you don't touch them, you don't look at them, they can be what they want. That's the theory. It's indeterminate. And obviously, religiously, we don't really accept indetermination. We believe that God is all knowledgeable, that He knows. We just limit it. All right. So that's another example. Okay. So this was all to demystify science, just to recap. So the first one is to accept, or to realize that there's an opposition, an apparent opposition between science and religion. And we listed these on the side. Then the second one is to realize that we have a limited perception. Our senses are limited, but our tools also are limited. So science is only one way to experience the world. You might have others. Religion is another one. Then the truth itself is inaccessible from a scientific point of view. So you have to accept that truth is out of reach, but it doesn't mean that you're stuck. You can still push forward, you can still advance, but then you have to use some tricks, either averages, probabilities, models, theories. That's what we use to just push the boundary forward. All right, does it make sense? We go to the second part. What's the second part? Yes, how do you... Yes, how to establish and practice new theories. All right. So again, I'll split it into three sections. First is the origin. The source of the theory has to be trustable. Like you need to have trust in the scientists, or even the scientific community. If you don't trust them, you will discard whatever comes out of it. And whoops, too fast. So the source of the model, or the source of the theory, must be trusted. One of the best example here, it's when we went from geocentrism to heliocentrism. Yes, please. Yes, it is. You got the brownie point. Yes. So this one is Ptolemy's. Yes, it is. Who's responsible for the other? Yes. So Copernicus decided, I don't know if you know about geocentrism. Geocentrism is when you have the Earth at the center and everything else revolves around. That's geocentrism. The Earth is at the center and everything, the sun, the stars, the planets, everything else revolves around. Then we shifted through Copernicus to heliocentrism, where the sun is the center, and then everything else revolves around. Every other planet in the solar system revolves around. All right, and Copernicus decided to change the center about 1500s. Why did he choose to do so? It's not clear. It's not clear because his system, the heliocentrism that he proposed, didn't work either. It didn't match the data better. And when you wake up in the morning and you look at the sky, you see the sun turning around. It's illogical to put the sun at the center. So it's counterintuitive, and it didn't fit the data either. So why he chose to do so is not really clear. But he chose to do so, and he was respected in the field. He was prominent. He's like an emeritus professor. He was writing his book. People were waiting for the book. Even though he was just writing it, they were still waiting for it. And when the book came out, everyone was eager to just have a copy of it and read through it. Whether they accepted him or not doesn't matter. The people after him, after publishing his book, decided to take it. They wanted to either prove him or to disprove him. because he was so prominent, they wanted to deal with him. So either to prove him or to disprove him. And that made his theory, that helps his theory to go forward, to be used, or to be developed a bit further until it works. So the source, just to say that the source must be trusted. Why? Because he's not the first one to propose a heliocentric model. People have proposed it in the past, since the Greek. There's a Greek, his name is Aristotle, around 300 BC, so 300 years before Christ, Isa alayhi salam. He proposed to put the sun at the center, but no one took him seriously. Why? Because he didn't have the authority and he didn't have the data either. So for like 2,000 years, the heliocentrism existed, but was never taken seriously until Copernicus, because he was quite famous. So the origin, yes, is important. You have to trust the origin. Then it has to be logic. Once you trust the origin, then you can take, like once you trust Copernicus, then you can take his theory and try to make sense of it. Is it logical? Is the message logical? So what we want to do is to evaluate the theory itself. And if I can take the same example, and the first check you do is to see if it fits the data. Like the data for that example in cosmography or in astronomy, you look at the stars, you look at how the planet moves, and you try to make a model out of it. And you see if the model works. If the model can describe what's happening out there, then it's okay. So the model that Copernicus proposed looked like that. It looks really similar to the to the geocentric one. I don't know if they're like concentric circles. And because he's dealing with, and because he's dealing with circles, he cannot make a proper model. It doesn't fit reality. In reality, the planets don't revolve in circles. They revolve in other shape. Do you know which shape? An ellipse. An ellipse, yes. So just to confirm that his initial model didn't work. But you had Kepler. I don't know if you heard of Kepler. He was a staunch Neoplatonist. I don't know if Neoplatonists, they believe in God, but they believe that the sun is God. So for him, it was logical that the sun should be at the center. If God is the sun, then God is the center of everything and the source of everything. So he wanted to put the sun at the center. And he saw Copernicus' theories like, this sounds good, I will make it work. And I will make it work at all costs, which means he was ready to get rid of circles, which were considered divine. Circles and lines were considered divine for Greeks, even for Muslims afterwards. And what else did he give rid out of? Yes, he wanted to... Anyway, he replaced the circles with ellipses. And as soon as he did this, so he got rid of some divine element to replace them with new divine elements. He got rid of circles to put the sun at the center and using ellipses. And then it worked. Then the model matched the data. So it's only after Kepler that the theory was universally accepted. Before it was purely unbelief. If you were a Neoplatonist, you would take Copernicus. If you were from other faith, you would take geocentrism. So anyway, but after Kepler, because he was able to make the model work so perfectly, then everyone had to accept heliocentrism after him. So that it has to match the data. And again, when you wake up in the morning, you come out and you look at the sun turns around you. It's counterintuitive to put the sun in the center. So the theory, whenever you put a theory up, it can go against your intuition. It can be counterintuitive. As long as it matches the data, it's okay to be counterintuitive, to defy intuition. So that one example is with astronomy. Another example is with this guy here. Who is him? Einstein. What did he do? Yes, what is it?
Mass can bend space-time. And then I think the way he proved it was
had to get like an eclipse, and then you
Mhm.
you could see that the bending of the light essentially,
Yep.
because the sun has a mass,
Yes. Yep. Yep.
and so the moon and the sun like both have mass. So.
Yes. So that's one of them. That mass can bend space and time. So it's to accept that time is relative. That's another one. It's like if we both look at something, if we both look at a lightning in the sky, we assume that the lightning happened at the same instant for both of us. But he says no, because we're in different locations, we might be even moving in different speed. It doesn't happen at the same time for both of us. Our time is different. That's what he come up with. It's counterintuitive, but we accept it today.
I've got a question.
Yes.
What definition of time did Albert Einstein bring?
The time goes forward only, but it is relative. We have our own time. Like time doesn't pass the same way for me or for you. It might be slower for you, it might be faster for me, depending on how fast we move.
So, would you believe in Aristotle that time is a measurement of change? Is that
I think that the Greek had a different conception of time. So his conception of time is not the same as the Greek one for sure. What the Greek was, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure I answered the answer. You answered your question. I'm not sure.
so? It's a different model of time.
Yes, for him, yes. Like before Einstein, we assumed that the time was the same for everyone. Like if you have the sun and the earth is rotating around the sun, it rotates the same way for all of us, regardless if we're on the earth or in space or on in the sun, it doesn't matter. When Einstein comes up, he said, no, it's different. If you're in different location, if you're moving at a different speed, the time will pass differently. Yes.
Like one of the ways they prove it now is like they have a clock on like the surface and like on the surface of like the ground, and then they have a clock higher up. The
Yes.
clock higher up would move faster.
Yep.
Because it's like I think it travel like something to do with like the
Yeah, they took an atomic clock on the plane and they went a few times around the Earth to see if, and then to land back again and to see if they have any difference. I'm not sure they've seen a difference, or the difference was really minimal. It's hard. Yes. I think that the best proof was through the eclipse, when you can see the bending of the light. But anyway, so the theory can defy intuition. It has to, it has to match the data. But the cost of matching the data is that it might defy intuition. So these are important concepts because religion will have the same. So keep them in mind. Then the last one, the theory has to match the data even if it defies intuition, even if it requires you to believe in something that you cannot see, to believe in the unseen. And I guess the best example for me is the electron. We all believe in an electron, but no one has seen it ever. It's just too small. You can use it, you can develop techniques, tools that make use of the electron, but you don't see it. It's a theory.
Can't you observe the electron?
Sorry?
Can't you observe it?
No.
So at least like, so
You can observe.
it explains the electricity, yeah?
Yes.
So you can observe the electricity, so you
Aha.
can observe
So that's
it.
the effect, not
Yes, you observe the effect, not the electron itself. You see the effect of it. So when you see a lightning, it's because you ionize molecule. You have a molecule, you take an electron out of it, and it recombines, and it emits light. You see that light. You don't see the electron itself. So you always see effects of it, but never the object itself. And that's okay in science now. So you can make a whole theory of electrons, and as long as it matches the data, as long as it's useful, you accept it. You've never seen it, but you accept it. That's where, that's linked to my last point here, the utility. If the theory is useful, the more useful it is, the more accepted it is, the more trustable it is. So you can evaluate, the goal is to evaluate the usefulness of the theory. And one element here relate to what you told me before. The theory has to be all-encompassing. the more it can be applied in different parts of your life, the better it is. And one example here is the Newton's law. The Newton's law, Newton developed the law of gravity. Although he didn't know what gravity is, he just said if you have two masses, they will attract with each other. And that relation between mass, like if you have a mass, then you attract other masses, can be applied in space. Like the moon is attracting the earth is attracted to the sun, but also to yourself on earth. Like if I have a mass, I will attract you and you will attract me the same way. So Newton's law was, they call it universal gravitation. Anything that has mass will follow the same law. It's applicable on earth and beyond earth. That distinction was important in the Greek because they believed that the terrestrial realm behaved differently from the celestial realm. For them, whatever was on earth was imperfect and changing, and whatever was out of space was perfect and perpetual. So the distinction here, or that law was important because he said, no, they both behave the same way, whether you're on earth or beyond earth. It's all obey the same law. All right. So it has to be encompassing. The more, the better. Then it has to be practical. So you can say you have not a contradiction, but a trade-off between precision and practicality. Like if you're an engineer and you want to build a dam, let's say, you could use quantum mechanics to define every interaction between molecules within your dam, but it's just too much. You don't need that precision. You can just use Newton's law and you'll be well off. It will work. So in a way, you're accepting an approximation. Newton's law is just an approximation today. Quantum mechanics is better. It's a better approximation. But you prefer a lesser approximation just because it's more practical. So you have a trade-off between precision and practicality. It has to be practical. You have to be able to practice it. If you cannot practice it, it becomes, I would say, useless materially. All right. So to summarize, first you need to check the origin. The origin has to be trustable. You have to trust in science either the community or the scientist. Then you can assess the message. The message itself or the theory has to be logical. It has to be coherent, even if it's counterintuitive, even if it asks you to believe in the unseen. And then it has to be useful. And it has to be applicable in as many spheres of life as possible. The better, the more aspect of life, the better it is. All right. So these, I would claim, these are the criteria on which we accept a scientific theory. The origin, the logic, and the usefulness. If it misses one of these, you will discard the theory. It won't live long. And this has been historically proven, I would say. So if these are the criteria on which you assess a theory, and you're ready to believe in things like an electron, then what about faith? Can faith fulfill the same criteria? And if it does, then how can we reject it after that? So that will be my argument. So let's start. How to establish and practice faith? The origin. What is the origin in Islam? What's your origin of faith? Yes, the Prophet alayhi salam. Then the question is, okay, we have the man. How do you assess it? How do you build trust in him, alayhi salam? Okay, you have to discuss the character. You have to assess his character. How do you know about his character? He's not living anymore. Yes, the reports. So that's an example of a truth that is not accessible anymore. He's not living with us, but you still need to assess. You can assess him, his life, through reports, through hadith. How are yes, go ahead.
Also what he came with, testing what he came with, essentially, like, well, he came with a message, but you need to know, like, what was that message, what was he saying, and then kind of, I think that leads on to the next point, like,
yep.
Yes, it may be counterintuitive, or like, it may seem
Yes.
counterintuitive.
So for me, that would be the next point. First, I need to trust him, then I'll assess the message. But first, I want to build trust in him, alayhi salam. So yes, through hadith. And the hadith works the same way as in science, if you want. We don't have him living with us, but we have reports. Then we have to classify these reports through a probability scale. Which one has the highest probability of being true? So that's what we have to assess. And I think in total we have few hundreds of thousands of hadith. And if you classify them, if you take the classification from the muhaddithun, you end up with about 10,000 hadith at the end that are classified as being the highest truth value, as being pretty certain that he said so, or he did so, or he, I don't know, behaved in such a way with the companions. So we have the hadith, and we have them, we can still assess them, you can access them. And through this hadith, then you can assess his character. Then you can see, okay, do you want to trust in him or not? Based on what he did in his life, based on his life, even based on what people said about him, even more based on what his enemies said about him, his friends and enemies. So you have quite a lot to assess. And that's important because you don't have any such thing in other religion. We don't have hadith about Isa alayhi salam or about Musa alayhi salam. These don't exist anymore. So that's pretty cool in Islam. So once you trust, you will trust in the person of the Prophet alayhi salam. Then you can assess the message, the logic. Is it logical? So to assess the message, if you go through the same criteria, the same processes, first it has to match the data. So what he said, or the Quran itself, has to match the data. What's the data? Yes?
It's a history, natural phenomena,
Mm-hmm.
just reports, like, stories that have been passed down.
Polytheism as well.
Yes. Yep, I agree. And because I'm a scientist, I will stick with natural phenomena. But yeah, I agree. It has to match the data, and the data is basically what you said. If the Quran talks about natural phenomena, is it still actual today, or was it coherent even in the past? If the Quran talks about past histories or future events, can it match? Can you read them in the light of these future events? So if I stick with science, because I'm a scientist, you must have seen these pictures. That's from a book written by like, yes, Zakir. And he will tell you that yes, the Quran matches with modern science, whether it's astronomy, embryology, the vascular medicine, the bees, the moon, the spider, and others. And oftentimes these are used as miracles. You might have heard of scientific miracles of the Quran. I try to avoid calling them miracles. I don't know if you agree. So I can say miracles, but they will be subjective miracles, not something that I can force you to become Muslim with.
This is a question I was going to ask later. But like, to what extent does one? So they see something like with like a natural phenomena in the like Quran being mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the spreading of the skies, right? How does one like stop themselves from like making a point like a subjective like argument like, oh, like this is a miracle, this is referring to like, the universe expanding. How does one stop like the use of scientific miracles to like try to prove stuff? Because a lot of people make this argument, but it's like I've heard that it's not really like you want a theory to be like live like throughout whatever age, like not be like a falsifiable theory. Like you can either test it and it's true, or you can test it and it's false. Like how do you stop yourself from doing that?
So personally, I would redefine miracle. I would say that a miracle is anything that brings you toward God. So if as a believer I see something and it brings me awe, like, oh, subhanallah, I don't know, something is beautiful. It brings me towards God, that was a miracle. I won't define miracle based on how much I can explain it or not explain it. Whether you have a physical explanation to the phenomena or not, for me it doesn't matter. That's not what makes it miraculous. Why? Because Allah says clearly in the Quran that He can take a disbeliever, show him any signs, and he will still disbelieve. And it's only as soon as he gets closer to Allah, then it becomes a miracle. Like the same way when Musa alayhi salam defied the magician, he has a staff that changes into a snake. The magician realized that this was beyond magic, and they believed. But Pharaoh still refused, and many other people around still refused. So it's not because the phenomenon is explainable or not that makes it a miraculous. It's how much it brings you towards God. That's how I define miracles. So now these science in the Quran, if it brings you towards God, yes, it becomes a miracle. But you can be an atheist and discredit any of these so-called miracles. Because for them, they will see contradiction, they will see fault in the argument. Maybe, I wanted to go in one of them in more detail, embryology, because it might be the most well-known argument taken. So you have a few, I mean, you have what? The creation by pair, the creation of the universe and the standard model of the universe, the Big Bang. I've listed some celestial bodies and the orbits, the universe and its forces, the mountains and the roots of the mountains. You have the origin of iron, the origin of life from water, even the origin of water, embryonic development. And I just wanted to focus on that embryology.
I do have a question.
Yes.
We discussed that science has limitations, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And if the limitation of the science
Yep.
led the science to come with a false information,
Yes.
and these informations disagree with Quran,
Yes.
as a Muslim, which obviously you're gonna follow the Quran, but as an atheist, they're gonna follow the science. So how can you respond to that argument?
That's why.
This argument is a very famous argument to just disprove Quran.
Yes.
We know that not everything in Quran is explained and very well known to humans.
True.
That's
And-
true, yeah?
And I agree, you shouldn't give all the powers to science to decide what is a miracle or not, or what is true or not, because it is changing.
But
So I
an
agree.
atheist would say the same thing about Quran.
Yep. True. And I don't have any magic wand to tell him otherwise. At the end, whether you want to see a miracle or not is a choice. If you believe, you will see miracles. If you want to disbelieve, you will see contradictions. You will see maybe an illusion, a physical phenomena, or something else. But on your point, I totally agree that you shouldn't give science the power to decide what is true or not, what is ultimately true or not. Because science, as you said, is limited. You can approach truth, like most probably, yes, the earth revolves around the sun. But you can always imagine that maybe it will be different, or another time it will be otherwise.
But
Maybe it will be.
should we give the same concept for Quran? Because that is gonna be like false, yeah?
So
I'll give you an example.
go ahead.
When Quran said, وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ,
Mm-hmm.
some people started to believe that the earth is flat.
Flat,
That
yeah.
was long time ago. But now we know that the earth is a globe or
Mhm.
sphere. So how can we find that balance between giving the science the power, but also not disbelieving in Quran?
Ha. Ha. So for me, I see this as a miracle, but it's a subjective miracle. Why? Because the Quran has to be relevant in all times. Like it has to be relevant for someone who lived 1,000 years ago, and it has to be relevant for someone who's living today. 1,000 years ago, they believed they were in a flat earth, and today we believe we live in a round earth. So it was making sense for someone living 1,000 years ago, true. But it's also making sense for us today, because you can always interpret the verse differently. Maybe, I don't know, if you go on top of a hill, yes, you see the earth flat. But the people, when the Quran was revealed, it was really revealed in Mecca, Medina. They are not flat land. They're not entirely flat. Uhud is a mountain. For them, obviously, it was not perfectly flat either. So flat had to be interpreted in their time. Similarly, it has to be interpreted in our time. We might interpret it differently. And for me, that's the beauty, that the same verse can still match both understanding. If you think you live in a flat earth, or if you think you live in a round earth, you can still make sense of the verse. And for me, that's the beauty, to have a text that keeps its relevance even if you shift scientific paradigms. These are huge paradigms, from like geocentrism to heliocentrism, or flat earth to a round earth. These are huge shift of paradigms. And the Quran still match both. It's still relevant to both. And it's relevant by being, maybe you can call it elusive. Maybe the way it's written, it's poetically written, so you can interpret it. But still, it's not easy to do. I don't know of any other text. If you look at any other religious text, they don't match. They are not as relevant. So for me, that's a miracle of the Quran. The fact that it is relevant today, and it was relevant in the past. So maybe to continue on this example on embryology. So his argument, that this is Kate Moore again, Professor Moore. He's an embryologist, so he's a specialist. He's an emeritus professor in his field. And the argument he brought was like, the Quran describes different stages of embryology. And that's what we see clinically today. We see the same 4 stages. And he said, because this couldn't be known at the past, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he must have had this knowledge from somewhere else. Then it has to be divine knowledge. Then God exists and Islam is true. That's his argument. But he was not a historian. He was an embryologist. The different stages of development were known by the Greeks. You have some Greeks. The most famous one is Gallieni. He was a Greek living in about 200 after Christ. And here you can read his text. His text is in Greek, and you get an online translation of the text, and you can read exactly the 4 same stages. So then it destroys the argument from Kate Moore. But they still say that the Quran was relevant to the science of the past. All right. And then you can see the steps, the 4 steps that Gallieni suggests is 1, a seminal fluid, 2, inarticulated piece of flesh that contains blood, heart, brain, liver, but without any clear distinction. It's like a blob. 3, it becomes a limbeless silhouette, so you still see some definition, but there's no limbs. And you can clearly see some of the organs, the heart, the brain, the liver. Then the 4th stage is when the limbs are clearly present, and all the organs. So for him, these are the 4 stages. And you can relate them to what the Quran says. The Quran talks about nutfa, which is a fluid. Then alaqa, which is like a blob of blood. Then mudghah, which is linguistically it's a chewed piece of flesh, but it's something that starts having definition but without limbs. And then the 4th one is the acquisition of bone and flesh, understanding that you have limbs if you have bones. So you can say that, okay, all the 4, they coincide. The thing is, Gallieni in his book, it's a book called De Semine, he didn't only talk about the development of embryology, he talks about many other things, including things that we disprove today. So he talked it will go into some details. He talks about seminal fluid of woman and man, and he said the man is what will give the fetus. The fluid of the woman only serves as a nutriment for that of the man. So he makes a distinction between fluids. He said that the sperm will be the source of all membranous organs, so vein, arteries, bones, nerves. He said also that the source of that fluid, it's not only the genitals, it's all the arteries and the veins. So he says more than just the developments, things that we know that are wrong. But the Quran doesn't take any of these that are wrong, that have been disproved today. And in here, I see a type of miracle. In miracle in the sense that the Quran talked about science that was maybe known in the past, but only the science that is proven to be right today. I think that makes sense. The science didn't talk about anything that now is disproved. And about the source of that fluid, it mentions that it's within the lower abdomen, lower part of the abdomen, which is all right. It fits all the genitals. So just to say that I can see miracles, but it's a miracle in that the Quran is not directly wrong. So then you cannot use this to convince an atheist. So I don't have that magic wand to convince an atheist. But as a believer, that makes sense, and this strengthened, in a way, my faith. That it still matches. The Quran was relevant in the past, and it's still relevant today. All right. This was a tangent. So it has to match the data, even if it defies intuition. By defying intuition, I take the example of what's good and evil, or how do you define success and failure? Like as a Muslim, you try to distance yourself from the good it feels or the pain you feel. Like if something happened, if it's painful, it's not necessarily bad for you. Intuitively, if it's painful, it's bad. So the Islamic teaching tries to make you realize that no, what is painful might not be inherently bad. You might benefit from it. Like if you go to the dentist, it might be a pain, but you'll benefit from it in the long run. So these are the type of intuition that the religion defies. And it's allowed to defy intuition. Science does the same. And even if it requires you to believe in the unseen, why not? As long as the logic is here, as long as it fits the data and it's the whole of the message is logical, then you're allowed to defy intuition and to ask you to believe in unseen, like angels, God itself, jinns, etc. All right. Then you can ask, what about miracles? That's the next question. Like miracles. By miracles, I mean something that defies the usual laws of nature, like the snake that turns into, the staff that turns into snake. I'm happy to talk about miracles further, but it will be too long, so I'll keep it for another lecture. In short, just to give you a short answer to it, I'll say that science is here to describe reoccurring laws. It doesn't deal with one-off events. All these miracles, like the staff into snake, the parting of the seas, the moon splitting, these are all one-off events. Okay, the snake into staff happens, how many times? 3. 3. And then the tree with Pharaoh and then with the magician. So anyway, but these are still the same person. It's only happened a few times. Another example, scientifically you believe in the Big Bang, but the Big Bang is a one-off event. You cannot explain it. You cannot explain it scientifically because it's a one-off event. So yeah, science has nothing to say about one-off events. So these things that goes against natural laws, they are most of the time one-off events. So science has nothing to say about it. That's the short answer.
Would you say the Big Bang is a miracle?
If it brings you towards God, yes. Yes, because as an atheist, it's normal. You expect the Big Bang. That means that it's a necessary explanation to explain how we are today. So then, okay, we assess the origin, the character of the Prophet ﷺ, the logic of his message. It has to make sense. For me, scientifically, it has to be scientifically relevant. Then you can assess how useful it is. And yes, I can see usefulness in the message. Even though the faith is not here to be, like the ultimate objective of faith might not be to help you materially, you can still derive material benefit from practicing it. And by material benefits, I can see positivity, agency, efficiency, health-wise, I can see benefits. You tell me, positivity, how can practicing faith makes you happier? Yes, community. Go ahead.
The knowledge that even though things are not great now, that ultimately they will get better.
Yep. The promise of a better future. Yep. What about agency? How can it make you useful in society? Yes.
The push towards charity.
Yep. Go ahead.
By avoiding the haram, you're basically being a better person.
Yes, because you avoid what? Alcohol and other relationships. Yes. What about efficiency? How can it make you more efficient? Yes.
You get much stronger discipline, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to someone who sits around doing nothing, praying, going to the mosque, doing other additional things, it brings a regiment and order in your life.
Yep.
You can tackle tasks and other things you might not be able to otherwise.
True. It helps you even to compartmentalize your time. Go ahead.
Because you're both caring for your physical and spiritual needs,
Mhm.
that means that you're fresh to basically take on next task, or whatever it may be. It's like you're constantly refreshing
Yep.
and replenishing throughout the day.
Yep. That's true. I agree. What about health? How can it make you healthier? It's all the same part. Go ahead.
Because if his diet, the way he used to eat, that's part of sunnah.
Yep. Go ahead.
The position, I mean, like using prayer, the positions that you get into, like for example, sujood,
Mm-hmm.
it's a position, I believe, like naturally the heart is like meant to be above the head or like above the brain, or something along those lines. And or another position is like when you go for ruku, it's very good for your lower back, especially because it's similar to like, I don't know if people know what good mornings are. That movement in the gym is very similar to that movement, and it's very good for strengthening one's lower back if done correctly.
No, mashallah, so you're doing yoga when you pray. That's good. Hopefully that's not your ultimate objective, but yeah, if it helps, why not?
I would say spiritual health, like purifying the heart.
Yeah, but for this I agree as a believer, yes.
Even
Yep.
if just physical health, just not drinking or doing drugs or eating food which it's forbidden to you.
Yep.
You keep yourself in a physically healthier state than someone who partakes in subjective.
Yep. Because usually the foods that are forbidden are bad for your health anyway. Go ahead.
Even like fasting is beneficial. It has like health benefits as well.
Yep. Like today we hear about intermittent fasting. It's better for your health. Yes. I didn't hear, sorry. Yep. So that would be a reason why you should take care of it and follow these requirements or guidelines.
Stress slowly kills you. When you're positive, you have different outlets. Like for example, whether it's like community, whether it's prayer, whether it's like serving your community, but like having a higher purpose.
Yes.
It gives you a sense of like relief and like contentment, and contentment kind of like gets rid of or helps you deal with stress.
Yep. And you'll be more effective if you're not stressed. That's true. Then the last point about encompassing. It is all encompassing. Like Islam gives you guidelines in all parts of your life. With your relation with your colleagues, your kids, your spouse. So it is, even at work, when you have hobbies, it is all encompassing. Like again, the more you can apply it in your life, the more applicable it is, the better. The more you're prone to accept and to keep it, to hold on to it. So just to summarize, so again, we've checked the origin. It requires trust. We build trust in the Prophet ﷺ. It has to be logical. We can assess the logic of the message. And that again, to have the Quran is quite unique. No other faith have the original books. That's pretty cool. Like the Bible we have are translations of what could be the other book. And we don't have a chain of narration. That chain disappeared, we just have the translation. which is why it lost relevance passing through scientific paradigm shifts, because it has been translated in a certain way, in a certain context, and that context does not exist anymore. So again, to have the original message is amazing.